the Jewish Spiritual Care Program at the Schechter Institute in Jerusalem. She brings over 25 years of experience in group facilitation with a focus on conflict transformation and peace building. In Cleveland, she previously worked with the Jewish Federation and the Israeli American Council as a program manager and community builder. Mirit is a mother of 3, and outside of her professional work, she enjoys traveling, reading, cooking, and whenever possible, taking a good long nap. I am honored to present to you Mirit Balkan.
Thank you, Russell. Everything you said is true. Okay, so welcome everybody. I just want to go to gallery to see who's here. And I would like to ask everyone to open cameras, even if you're folding the laundry or you're having a bad hair day. We still want to see you. You can eat, you can do any kind of activity while you're listening to us. It would be nice to just see faces. So thank you for joining us and thank you for being here. And we'll start, and hopefully if other people join, they'll join us. I'm going to start by sharing this presentation with you. We're going to go in between presentation and gallery because sometimes I would just like to see your faces. Remember, this was supposed to be when we meet each other in the conference. And since we couldn't do that, we're doing it online. So here goes. So everybody can see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Great. So just reminding you to bring a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper. But if you really don't like it, you can write on your device. But we're going to write today. And the best way to write is old school. So here goes. So, sorry. Sorry for that. Okay. Can people see my screen?
Right now we see a white screen with a line at the bottom. You might need to click through one more time because when you sent it to me, the text came up like click by click.
Right. Okay, let's see.
Thanks everyone for your patience.
This is so strange. I see it open. Okay. I think I got it now. Can everybody see my screen?
We see the slide
Brown thing
sorter on the
again.
left. Yeah.
I don't know why it's doing that.
So it seems like when you move to presentation mode, all of a
Yes,
sudden we can't see it. And if you leave it in the editing mode, we can see it. Then there we can see it.
I know.
So I'm not sure what's wrong.
We just tried it a minute ago and it was all working just fine. Ellison, do you want to try and share?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll
Bear
stop
with me.
sharing.
All right. Do you have the line at the bottom and what do you see?
Yeah. Can everybody see a gray area on the screen?
I
think we're
unfortunately
just
don't
gonna
see
have to
anyone.
I think we're going to have to just be okay with the gray boxes. I think that's going to be our best option.
Okay. Okay, so let's start. Can you move to the next slide, please?
And one more.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it's a different presentation, but I'll live. It's like everything is different. It's okay. So what are we going to do today? First, I'm going to talk a little bit about what is narrative medicine and why is it working so well with chaplaincy. And it's going to be a very short piece, although if I could, I would talk about narrative medicine for an hour and then we would start practicing it. But since I don't have that time, I'm just going to give a snippet of what is narrative medicine. You will already see why it's working so well with chaplaincy, and we'll move straight to the practice itself. So for today, I chose 2 items for us. We're going to do something called close reading, and it says ×2 because we have 2 items that we're going to close read. Then everybody will get some time for personal reflective writing. I'll give you prompts and you will have like between 8 to 10 minutes to write down. That will be a private part where you do your thing in your own table, in your own space. We're just going to hang out here if anyone has a question, but it's really your part. Then we'll split into breakout rooms. We'll have between 2 and 3 people in a room, and you will share. I will have very clear directions on what to share and what to do when you listen to others sharing. And then we'll conclude together in the meli'ah, in the group, and we'll integrate some of the reflection and the things we brought up into a collective midbar medaber. So I'm already inviting you to think about midbar in Hebrew is mem dalet bet resh, and the verb medaber, talk, is also mem dalet bet resh. So midbar medaber means desert talks. Okay? So we will conclude with that. And because I'm doing as if we're at the conference, so at 9 sharply, we will finish our session, but then we can stay out for hanging out, asking questions if you have, or just pretending as if we're together at the conference. And we want to share some experiences. Questions? Okay, so let's start. Next slide, please. Okay, so very shortly, what is narrative medicine? So narrative medicine is a pretty young field. It was formally developed in the early 2000s by Rita Sharon at Columbia University. And when I wanted to learn narrative medicine, I wanted to learn from the best, but I wasn't willing to pay a nickel to Columbia University. You can guess why. So I looked for the best next thing, and I found a graduate who has her own narrative medicine practice called Narrative RX, like, a prescription, Narrative RX. Her name is Julia Schneider, and she taught me everything she learned from Rita Sharon that was good enough for me. So, says Rita, the act of telling and receiving stories is the act of making meaning. The reason why this field started to emerge was as a response to a growing recognition that as medicine becomes more technologically, more goal-oriented, more fix-oriented, more here are the diagnoses that I can bill for assessing this patient. We're talking about a system that is efficiency driven and all the good things we can say about health systems we work at every day. It was very clear that there are some major human components missing from that care. And I'm talking, I'm going to be stereotypical for a minute. I'm talking mainly about doctors, but not just doctors. So the idea was, let's take medicine and humanities and build an interdisciplinary system that will allow doctors and other healthcare providers listen better to the narrative of the patient. That's in a very, it's in a nutshell. Of course, the idea sits on the foundation of the narrative approach that I'm assuming people here know, maybe from psychology or psychotherapy, or maybe even from CPE. And the idea is really for healthcare providers to work together with each other and practice that skill of narrative, the skills that narrative medicine brings. So later on, you are better when you meet your patients, family members, and other colleagues. So this is in a very broad sense. You see that there's a good array here of social work, anthropology, educations, fields that maybe for us as chaplains it makes a lot of sense that speak with each other, but in the medical world and certainly in medical education, it is not really the case. I'll give an example. You read a text and you imagine that the character is your patient, but the character is a Dostoevsky creation. So it's not different, right? They're both people. But the idea of taking a text and opening it, digging in, and starting to find all the things that we as chaplains do pretty much on a daily basis is one thing that narrative medicine teaches. Which takes us to the next question. Allison. So while I'm sharing here a bit of the core values and assumption of narrative medicine, you can even give me a thumbs up or any kind of reaction if it makes you think that we're talking about spiritual care. So attention, deep discipline, listening, and observation. Doctors, when they come to a room, and I apologize in advance if anyone here is a doctor, I'm stereotyping and generalizing, and I know that it's a bit unfair, but when you come into a room, you're there to observe, to give a diagnosis, and to move on to the next patient. So deep listening and observation is not the first skill. It's not the first tool you will pull out of your toolbox. Representation, giving form to experience through language, writing, or reflection. Affiliation, building connection through shared human meaning. In other words, you have to go through the experience in order to even try to understand what your patient is going through. For us, I think very basic from day one in CPE, but not necessarily in the medical world. The understanding that experience is not fully accessible without reflection. Action, reflection, action, right? That's what we do in CPE. Healing is not only clinical, it is a narrative, it's relational, and it's meaning driven. So many of our assessment models talking about, when I say our assessment models, I'm talking about chaplains, yeah. So they're all about, there's something going on right now in the room. between the patient and me, between the family member and me, right? A little Martin Buber there. And that interaction has its own meaning. And this is one of the things that we're trying to evoke. If we're very lucky and blessed, we sometimes do that. So for the doctor, this is almost it's almost like voodoo. What are you talking about? There's a diagnosis. The diagnosis was there before I came. My job is to come and diagnose, and it is not dependent if I'm in the room or not. So there you go. And the unspoken still shapes the clinical encounter, and that making space for reflection allows something essential to emerge. Think about how many times do you let a patient just, how many times do you work with silence? How many times you let the room be quiet? And doctors usually don't do that. If they're asking you, okay, Allison, so tell me about your symptoms. If Allison says, well, how long can she be quiet? Right? The doctor or the nurse would immediately help you. They'll say, any nausea, any falls in the last year, any, right? So there's no room for you being quiet. And also, we're in a rush here. So really, if you can expedite, we would appreciate it. Okay. So I know it's not fair because they have their own they have their own circumstances, but you know what I mean when I talk about working with silence. So going next to our next slide, I think you already know why this is working so well with chaplaincy. So I would like to stop sharing and just see people's faces before we dive in and hear a little bit about what's going on in your minds. So, Russell, you shared with me that you did a little bit of narrative medicine while doing your CPE. Anyone, like if you want to share, if anyone wants to share what's coming to mind when you hear about this narrative medicine assumptions and core values.
I've always loved the idea of story, and the in that same CP program they handed me the Patients as Text article that I read and also fell in love with. So this idea that we are our stories and our patients are their stories, and something magical happens in the mix of all of that has always been a big part of how I approach my work as a chaplain.
Yeah. Even just listening to your words, I don't know how much a medical student would feel comfortable saying there's something magical that happens, right? We can afford it, but yeah, thank you for sharing. Anyone else? I think Michelle is, you wanted to say something?
So, I, part of this, I know you're stereotyping doctors, and it doesn't bother me. I'm married to one, and who just went through a contract negotiation for a new job. And a lot of the negotiation had to do with how much time he was allowed to spend in a room with a patient. And he wanted more time. And it is, I just want to add, this has nothing to do with narrative. I mean, it does have to do with narrative and so on because it gets in the way. If a doctor wants to spend more time, the system that is designed right now in place in medicine prevents them from having that opportunity. So I think the desire for story and this connection actually goes both ways. And the desire is there, but the system is pushing against that. So I just wanted to share that one piece just from watching this unfolds in
Sure.
my house.
Right.
And the other thing is that I think, and I don't have this opportunity as much now in elder care, in long-term care, but I remember being in the hospital and getting interrupted by doctors or med students and telling them to wait. And one of my favorite memories was so a med student or a resident walked into an ER room and we were about to pray. And I said, "Oh, wait, we were just about to pray.
Yeah.
Stay in the room."
Uh-huh.
Because like that was part of the story.
Mm.
And I could tell it made them uncomfortable, but I think they probably gained a lot of that person's story just by being there before they even got to ask what's bothering you today.
Sure.
So I think all of this kind of there's opportunity to bring them in and there's also limitations. So I just wanted
Right.
to share that.
Yeah. No, first of all, thank you for talking about the system. And it's a systemic challenge. And that said, how cool would that be if on the very short time that you have, you ask even two really good questions so you get really good input. And yes, I also like involving everyone who's in the room by mistake or by definition in a prayer or a chat. And I feel that it definitely gives this is the story, right? This is where everything happens. So, yeah, thank you for sharing, Michelle. Anyone else?
I
Mirit.
was just going to share, it just so happened on Monday, I think it was, a client that I work with asked me to accompany her to a doctor's appointment she was really nervous about. And she told me about this doctor. He's actually Israeli. And I was like anxious. He spent so much time with her, just really listening. And it was at a big hospital, university clinics. I'm like, when are they going to come in? And like, it was amazing. He really listened to her pauses and her silence and her, kind of sidebars. And it was really beautiful. And actually, I've been thinking, should I switch to him? And listening to your introduction, I was like, yeah, this is really important. Even though my doctor's like, okay, but he was like, I've never seen anything like it. It was bizarre. I mean, it was wonderful, but it was just so unusual, especially with all the system
Yes, and of
limitations we
course,
all know
I'm
about.
not even going to the difference between inpatient and outpatient, urgent care and long-term care. I'm not even going there because, yeah. But I think we understand the challenge and the systemic, that really the systemic problem that is out there. And on that sense, I'm happy that I'm a chaplain and not a doctor. So, Allison, can you get us back on the slideshow just to see a little bit about what I wrote? Why does narrative medicine work so well with what we do? It aligns deeply with us because we already, yeah, this is good. Thank you, Allison. We already work with this in the space between story and silence. We recognize that meaning is often formed in fragments and not in conclusion. We don't have to have a bottom line at the end of a visit. And we understand that healing does not always look like a resolution, like fixing. It often looks like being witnessed, naming, or holding space, right? So for me, bringing narrative medicine into spiritual care was very natural. And who would have thought when I was young, my BA was in Hebrew University was general literature and philosophy. And then 30 some years later, I'm doing narrative medicine and going back to Dostoevsky. So this is how it speaks to me. Continuing to our next slide. So this is the time where you can click another one. And this is the time where we stop the recording. I will just share why, and then you can stop the recording. So usually in narrative medicine, we keep the idea that whoever participates, and if you're not here, then you're not part of this circle. So I want you to feel 100% fully comfortable in doing your own reflective writing and then sharing and responding about the artifacts that we will see. And so this is not for others to see and share, but if you liked it, we can think of other ways to make this, to pay this forward. So right now we're going to stop the recording. Thank you, Allison.